Hello Redditors, welcome back to Tales Against Humanity. Now, let's get started. In today's episode, sometimes all it takes is the tip of a finger. Don't provide support, then I will use a hammer. When all you give a person is a hammer, true power. Short way back in the olden days, I worked for a while as a supervisor in field service and support for a computer company. We had customers all over the country, and the rule was for a manager/supervisor to visit each customer, at least once per year. Anyway, I was visiting one of our more remote customers along with our local tech. SS was an excellent tech, smart, capable, and customers loved him. He and I got along very well, so the visit was more or less a formality. We're touring the machine room after I had met alone with the customer contact, C, who only had nice things to say about S. Everything is fine in the machine room. But I notice one thing. Our systems had a front panel with a couple of switches and various LED, and a key switch for the main power. The key could be removed in either the on or off position, and our policy was to leave the key removed to avoid accidental power cycling. Makes sense, right? Anyway, I notice. The key is in the switch. S follows my gaze and says, "That's not supposed to be there." He reaches down to remove the key, and as his finger barely touches the key, all the LED go off. S turns to me with a look of horror. Powering down without first terminating the running processes is a huge deal. The system is handling multiple databases, and this is the old days. The DB are now totally messed up, and a major rescue procedure will have to be performed by the customer, and their system will be offline for several hours. I guess we should go tell C they need to start the recovery procedure. Me. Oh, don't worry, they'll be along in a minute. Go ahead and reboot the system so it's ready for them. Seconds later, C walks through the door giving S and me an annoyed look. C wasn't happy, but she was very cool manager and knew that sometimes stuff happens. As explained, we both apologized and C went about starting the recovery process. We left C to her work, and since the visit was really done, we headed back to town. S was feeling pretty sheepish. He noted that powering off a live system was bad enough, but doing right in front of your boss was just too much. I agreed with him, but S and I friends to this day. Story 2. Don't provide support, then I will use a hammer. Inspired by this post, which reminded me of a similar story from the user perspective. I was hired to work at a 24/7 manufacturing company. I ran the engineering department and would work long hours, being on weekends, and answer my phone except when I muted it when I went to bed. Our IT department was an 8-4 operation with no after-hours support. Sometimes they would respond to an evening email and remote in, but never come back to the plant. There was no support from the C-level to improve this situation by forcing an after-hours response or providing more money to IT to hire, either on call support or a second shift. The main production server was very old and would have a soft lock pretty much every day. As it was related to the workload, this usually happened in day shift and IT would fix it. But if on a Friday at 5 p.m. the server would lock up, IT would not fix it, then production would slow down but not stop. Production would start writing things down on paper for entering the data later, be unable to look up which order had priority, and certain tests would need to run by engineering as the automated testing was down. This would impact my metrics, created upset engineers, which would delay other projects, reduced monthly revenue, created garbage data, and created more scrap. C-level would see that production never stopped, so viewed the problem as minor. The impact was more severe on production than engineering, but the production manager was more passive and rarely listened to anyway, so it became my problem to deal with. IT shared the server room with engineering as it was our storage area. So I had physical access to the servers but not login access. I found that if the server was unplugged from the UPS and then plugged back in, the server would reboot, reload the database, clear the lock, and allow production and engineering to continue as normal. This would cause all kinds of errors, but the production/engineering side was unaffected, so not my problem. IT asked me to stop doing this, so every time this occurred, I would send an email and ask them to fix it, which they could do remotely. I gave them 30 minutes to respond, even a reply of "we are working on it," before I would reset the server again. They rarely did, so another reboot. Within 6 months, I ended up moving laterally from engineering to running support services, which included IT. All the IT staff quit as I started publishing internal customer metrics, measuring impact to the business, and told them how that would affect their future performance reviews and salaries. The new IT staff that was hired had No trouble with production support, responding to after-hours emails and general company support. The business impact report was later used to justify a server replacement. Story 3. When all you give a person is a hammer. This happened a few years ago, and I was recently reminded of it. Customer complains about database errors that are coming up. Don't know what's causing them. Run a few traces, yada yada. Find a single patient that it's all traced back to. Look in DB and find that the patient has thousands of appointments scheduled. Going back a few years and going forward a few months. Up to 3-4 per day for all that time. They're all scheduled by the same 2 users. Sometimes only seconds apart. Okay, so probably not a technical issue, but one of a bad workflow, good. But why does one? This patient have so many appointments in 2. This patient caused DB errors. Look through the patient table in the DB and see that this patient doesn't have a first/last name, DOB, SSN, address, phone number, anything. What the fuck? Over. Well, that explains the software throwing DB errors when it comes across a patient with no name, etc. We set aside the question of why there's a patient with no data for now. Homework assignment for the customer. Find out why these employees keep scheduling appointments for a patient with no data. Turns out the employees don't have permission to block out appointment slots. So they schedule an appointment, and when they need to enter a patient name, they just leave everything blank and click OK. Lesson: when an employee doesn't have the tools to do their job correctly, they'll use the tools they have to get the job done, no matter the cost to those people behind the curtain. And yes, I realize that the system shouldn't allow appointments to be scheduled for patients without a name, but I didn't code it. They just found the loophole. Story 4. True power. I had been back at work for 1 month. The monthly line-by-line with accounts was my least favorite activity. An accounts lady had come down to my office to walk through the monthly finance figures. I was already bored, and we hadn't even started. Me, take a seat. I sheepishly gestured over to an office chair. It was in a poor state, as I had recently lost my office chairs. It was the best replacement I could find. As the accountant sat down, the chair wobbled worryingly. AC? Whoa, so wobbly. Me? Odd, yeah. Sorry about that. Do you want to swap? The accountant giggled slightly and braced herself against the table. She pulled out a laptop and notepad. AC? Thank you, but no. If I fall off, you owe me, though. Now, let's get down to the fun stuff. Me? Fun stuff. Sure. She's so transactional, I thought as I opened up the dreaded finance spreadsheet. Lines and lines of expenses. AC? First line, stationery order 325 yen, made on the 1st of the month by JT. Does it sound right? Me? Yeah. The accountant was beaming, tapping away at her computer. I had no idea what she was even doing. AC? Great. Did you have any context for it? Me? Air. Supplies for the office. I think it was a box of pens. It was the first item. I was already regretting purchasing anything. Was this finance's true nature? Reduce costs through burden. AC, box of pens. I'll pop that in the notes. Okay, second item, foodstuffs for office, 3,200 yen. Made on the 1st of the month by JT again. Me, that was coffee pods. A long time later. I was staring up at the ceiling, awaiting the sweet release of death. The accountant, however, was perky as ever, writing down notes for every item. AC, OK, line 51. Foodstuffs for office, 3,200 yen. Made on the 12th by JT. Me, yep, that was coffee pods. AC, another box. Wow, you guys really go through coffee pods down here. Comparing to last month, you've tripled. Act natural. Me, huh, odd. AC, could you think of any reasons why? I saw the accountant glance over to pile of coffee mugs on my desk I hadn't yet cleaned. Me, AC, let's just chalk this up to one of life's little mysteries. Make sure to like and subscribe for more interesting stories.